Good evening. I'd like to call to order tonight's meeting of the ISD 191 Burnsville-Egan Savage School Board. The date is November 16th, 2017, and the time is 6:30. And I'd like to welcome everyone who's joining us, both in person and at home. We always appreciate when folks decide to join us, so thank you. Director Vandenboom, would you please lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the first part of our evening starts with our Future Ready and Community Strong segment. I'd like to invite Director Luth to the podium.
He's here. Okay, welcome. So as I call people up tonight, students, I would ask you to go into the horseshoe, so they get a good view of you on the camera for our televised audience, etc. So this evening, we are pleased to welcome 7 Burnsville High School student seniors who are among the most academically talented scholars, not only in the city of Burnsville, state of Minnesota, but in the country, based upon their performance in the 2018 National Merit Scholarship Program. Alex Goody, Luke Hedorf, and Albert Lihu are among fewer than 1% of the students in the national who are named National Merit semifinalists. Would the three of you please join us here? Alex could not be here with us tonight. They will now be considered for the National Merit Finalist recognition, a designation that will be announced at a later date. All 3 began in Burnsville-Egan School District 191 at Sioux Trail Elementary School. Jim? Okay, just checking. Our illustrious alumni on the board from Sioux Trail. And then attended Metcalf Junior High, as it was then, and before then going on to Burnsville High School. Alex, who could not be here tonight, is involved in the National Honor Society, is a captain of both boys cross-country and Nordic ski teams. I know. Alex plans on majoring in computer science in college. Luke, who sits up with us at the board this year, is involved in the NHS National Honor Society as well, student council, and the tennis team. He plans to attend college next year and study engineering. Luke serves, as I kind of said before, but as our student representative to our district Board of Education this year. Albert is vice president of the National Honor Society. He plays varsity tennis and participates in the Quiz Bowl, the Burnsville Strong Group, and Bowls for Brainpower. Albert plans to study computer science in college and eventually go to graduate school for neuroscience. Put a round of applause for these 3. Just stay there. Next, we have Eric Anderson, Elizabeth McCormick, and Bailey Picard. Could you 3 please join your fellow students here? Who have been named commended students, a recognition that goes to fewer than 3.5% of those who took the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. Eric, who is currently a post-secondary enrollment option, or PSEO, student, participates in the Quiz Bowl and swimming. His future plans include studying computer science in college. Elizabeth is active in DECA and is interested in a career in business administration and/or finance. Bailey plans on studying history and architecture with the hopes of working in historic preservation or in a museum. I'd then like to introduce Senior Victor Sanchez Villegas. Please join us.
Thank you.
Who has earned national Hispanic recognition from the College Board for his performance on the National Merit Qualifying Test in conjunction with his grade point average at Burnsville High School. Victor is among 5,000 of the 50,000 test takers who identified themselves as Hispanic Latino on the test and are now being honored for academic achievement. Victor is involved in DECA, Math League, Quiz Bowl, and volunteering. He plans to study engineering in college next year. On behalf of the entire Board of Education, I congratulate all of you on your outstanding academic achievement. And I also want to thank you for all of your involvement and contributions to Burnsville High School, our school district, and our community. We are very proud of you, and we know that your futures are bright. As always, we like to honor parents for their part they play in the success of their students. So if there are any parents of students that are here this evening, would you please stand so we can also give you a round of applause? And as kind of our tradition here, and you can lead them, Luke, we ask that you allow a chance to shake your hand with each of our board members. Thanks, Luke. Congratulations. Great work. Congratulations. Way to go. Way to go. You guys can be seated.
And now we would like to recognize our DECA students. 3 Burnsville High School students are here this evening to share information with us about a special project which clearly illustrates how they are both future-ready and community-strong. Welcome, students. Would you please, once you are seated, introduce yourselves and tell us about your amazing project.
Hello, my name's Elizabeth McCormick.
Mine's Kaylee Martineau.
And I'm Jake Chudicke. So we are the Burnsville High School blood drive team. We recently put on the second largest blood drive in BHS history. We got the idea from our PR project for DECA. We're doing a PR project to address the natural disasters that have happened across America recently. And through this project, we've made a lot of community partnerships, some of which are with Memorial Blood Drives and Firefly Credit Union.
All right, so community outreach was a very important part of our project. And with that, we wanted to get DECA members involved. So we actually hosted a calling party where we had multiple DECA members attend, and we called 143 local businesses. And with that, not only did we reach out to our community, but we also built valuable skills of building connections. So some of the community members that we built connections with were Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, Pan America, Hampton Inn, and Burger Jones, to name a few. And all of those were great, generous donations that either provided food or supplies to our blood drive. Memorial Blood Centers, as Jake mentioned, was the company that we were going through to actually host the blood donation. And we attended a workshop that they provided at Children's Hospital in Minneapolis this fall. There we got a firsthand experience on the process of blood donation, as well as tips and tricks on how to run a successful blood drive. And I think one of the most inspiring parts that we learned there were the speakers that they brought in. They were people who had dealt with blood donations themselves or had known someone who had gone through blood donations. And I think that was very inspiring, and we wanted to bring that message back to our school so we could get donors.
Based on the number of appointment slots we had, Memorial's goal for us was 150 units, but our personal goal was to collect 200 units and beat last year's blood drive. So we surpassed Memorial's goal. We collected 167 units at our blood drive, but we fell short of our personal goal. So in response, we decided to host a second blood drive. On May 23rd, we're hosting our second blood drive for any BHS students or staff that are at least 16 years old. And we're looking for a team of juniors to mentor in order to take over our blood drives in coming years. So we'll have 3 of them joining us. We don't know who yet. So they'll be learning basically what the process entails, what they need to do, and what we've been doing in preparation. And in addition, just in the last couple days, Memorial Blood Centers has reached out to us in order to host a third blood drive in January. So more details are to come, but we're excited to be building such a successful project and campaign. So thank you for your time. Do you have any questions for us about the project?
Board members, questions or comments? Director Vandenboom?
Well, it's really interesting to hear you talk about it. So did you guys participate in those calls to businesses, local businesses?
Did. Yes.
I'm just curious, you know, you like dial the switchboard and say, hey, can you walk me through how long it took to get to somebody who could talk to you about, you know, a blood drive and their involvement in that?
So we obtained a list of the businesses in Burnsville from the list on the Chamber of Commerce, and it was basically the process of cold calling. So we trained our DECA chapter members on what they should be saying and, you know, when to back off if the person's not responsive. And we heard a lot of no's, but we eventually heard some yeses, and they helped us connect with the right people in order to figure it out.
Oh, that's fabulous. And just when did the actual drawing of blood from the students actually take place? Was it after school, during school? You know,
Yeah.
so did you schedule a time that was like during a lunch hour?
Yep.
When
so
did it take place?
The blood drive was held from 7 a.m. until 2 p.m.
Oh.
And we pulled students' schedules if they didn't indicate that they had a study hall, and we located classes that would be easy to miss, and then we excused them from those classes.
That's
And then
great.
throughout the day, some donors wouldn't show up for their appointments, or they were deferred for various reasons, so we did have walk-in times as well.
Yeah. That's fabulous. Thank you, guys.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. This really is a great service to our community and to the community at large, and I will look forward to seeing a date in January to participate. Thank you
you.
very much for joining us. Now, we're going to talk about, I'm sorry.
Success breeds success.
That's a lot of work. Good job, guys. Way to go.
Now we are going to talk about Farmers Insurance. Dr. Kathy Funston, our Director of Strategic Partnerships and Pathways, is here with a special guest to share information about an exciting new partnership that is providing financial support to schools while also supporting our college and career pathways and student athletics. Dr. Funston?
Thank you, Chair Alt, Directors of the School Board, Superintendent Amoroso, and Luke. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to share with you a new kind of partnership, and one that we really do believe can be a model for small businesses in our community to be able to interact and partner with our school district in order to support our programs and our students. And this particular partnership, it does support all of our strategic directions, but in particular, I'm going to be talking about how we are maximizing our resources for optimal student learning and also increasing the capacity to partner with our community in new and different ways. And to begin this evening, I'd like to introduce our newest partner, and Mr. Tim Otting
How's that coming out up there?
with the Otting Agency, and he can tell you a little bit more about his approach to partnering with us and how we actually began our partnership around supporting our students.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it, and thank you to the board for having us, the Otting Agency. My daughter is here with me, she's my business partner, right hand, and she enjoys working with her dad every single day. Let's give her a round of applause. I recognize some board members. I think we met, Darcy and Abigail, at
Yes, we did.
the Burnsville Fire Muster. So I know two more people in this area. So I'll just give you a quick background on myself. I spent the first part of my career dealing with educational assessment companies, publishers, companies like Houghton Mifflin and McGraw-Hill, and the young students that were here, I'm sure, know of ACT. We worked with the publishers in terms of not only the development, but then the manufacture and distribution of tests. So, but was doing that for 28 years since I began in that career. And so education has always been in my blood, if you will. And then 2 years ago, in fact, December 1st, 2015, I had convinced my wife it was a great idea if we pack up. We lived outside Chicago at the time. Let's pack up. Let's move to the Twin Cities. I bought an insurance agency. Imagine her delight. And so essentially we parachuted into the community. And our kids are older. They'd all graduated high school. Our youngest is a senior at the University of Iowa. Sorry, Gopher fans. But we had no connection to the community per se. So our first step was Burnsville High. Love sports, and so we connected with the athletic department over there. Farmers is very big in what they call affinity programs. So that can be education, that can be teachers, fire, police, doctors, attorneys. Attorneys is last on the list. Sorry, but they're very high on the education side, particularly teachers. So teachers that come to our agency get special discounts, but they're always wanting agencies to promote educational activities and events. And so that's how we got involved really with Burnsville High. But it was very one-dimensional. And we'll still continue to support that to some degree. But then I met Kathy, and we talked about really looking at what farmers did, and then how together we could collaborate and do a much broader scope and a much deeper dive. And so we spent the last couple of months just meeting and talking and collaborating and coming up with, I think, is a really cool, unique program that really just takes what farmers is offering, but utilizing the auditing agency to go, how do we drive this in a really directed way? So I guess the way that I think of this is we'll provide the fuel for the car, you drive it to where it is best needed and most needed across the entire district. So really that's why I'm here, and we're excited to partner with District 191 and certainly with Kathy.
And thank you very much. And we are incredibly excited as well about all of the opportunities that will be provided to our students in our schools. And the farmers and the auditing agency, like many companies, there are corporate responsibilities that many companies have and corporate giving programs. And so when we're talking about our partnership here, we're really talking about improving that access to education, equitable access to education, and also preparing our jobs for their futures and future employment. So for this particular partnership, we are looking at $500 each month that would go to a school or a program, and that would be across the district at all levels. We are looking to enhance the existing curricula, so we'll be working with our individualized student services and also our student improvement and systems improvement and student achievement programs to be able to identify what elements of the curricula we can enhance across the board that are the same at each level. And then this would be $6,000 per year, and this is an ongoing program. So it's just not a one-time, this is every month, every year, until the auditing agency decides that they don't want to partner with us any longer.
Nonsense.
So an example of this might look like what you see on the screen here. We might look at a middle school grant, and to be able to support our Minnesota Social Studies and Language Arts standards that are being taught in the classroom, we would work with our CISA department and identify perhaps what types of, let's say, Native American literature we can put into our curriculum that would enhance that, and each of the middle schools would get that, those additional resources. And really what that does is it helps us launch other partnerships as well. So when we think about adding these resources into the programs, we can then launch into continuing and embracing our partnership with the Dakota County Library System, which has already had a great start, and then also reaching out to the Minnesota Historical Society and then bringing them in as an additional resource. So it just actually launches, one partnership can launch many different types of partnerships and opportunities for our students. And if you would like additional information about this partnership or other partnerships, please feel free to contact me.
Great, thank you very much. Board members? Yes, Director Miller.
First of all, Tim, thank you very much. This is deeply appreciated. Kathy, I assume in conversing with Mr. Otting that you have talked about our Pathways programs. Is there any kind of future in there that we can figure something out, working with his organization?
Absolutely. There are multiple opportunities in his line of business where, for our Career Expo, for example, our students could be exposed to the insurance agency or entrepreneurship, owning your own business, small business. Tim is an active member of the Chamber of Commerce, so how all of those pieces play together. So that's one avenue that we could expose our students to an industry and a local employer. We also have the job fair. So if Tim would like to come and represent his business at the job fair, we could do that as well. We're working on an intern program, and right now we're looking at community internships. And so we could approach Mr. Otting with the opportunity to have a student intern in his office. And he has got a lovely daughter who is very good at what she does in his office, and she would be a great mentor to any of our students as well. So there are a lot of different opportunities. So when we think about our business classes, I just saw Megan Malone here, who was working with, who is our DECA sponsor. And she would be also another teacher that we would approach to have Mr. Otting or his daughter come into the class and talk to students about their jobs, what they do, how did they get into this business. Because not everybody follows a linear path out of any kind of school, whether it's out of Burnsville or whether it's out of college or post-secondary training. So how might paths change, and as you know, and how do you make those decisions along the way?
Yeah, I've never encountered any business, small or large, that has more resources than they would like to have on hand. So I'm sure, one other idea would be if, maybe a research project or something that could be kicked over, the opportunity to crunch some numbers that, Mr. Otting just doesn't have time to do. So keep that stuff in mind. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Director Vandenboom.
So I always, my company, they always ask you, so how do you measure success? And I'm thinking about it from your perspective. I think of partnerships, and I think of, partnerships need to be reciprocal. There's something we get from you, and what are you getting from us? And as an agency, you've got Farmers, the big insurance company, and an agency. I'm kind of wondering how what would look like success to you, both at the agency level and then maybe from the Farmers level, to sustain this thing?
I don't know that I can speak for the farmer side. I'll talk about from an agency side.
Okay.
We'd like to have every teacher in District 191 become part of our agency. That would be a great measure of success, right? Look, it may sound cliche, but part of it is we wanted to give back. We bought a sizable agency. It's an old agency, 50 years old. And we wanted to become part of the community, joining the chamber, becoming connected with Burnsville High School, now launching this. I think this is so new and unique, because I know what other agencies do in terms of utilizing what Farmers provides, support they provide towards the education side. But I think in what Kathy has developed and what we're going to help facilitate is really unique. We're not really looking, success in this area would be, if as we start to launch this on every month and watching this really become advantageous for the classrooms, that's a huge success.
Yep.
Will we benefit from it? Sure. At some point, the return that we'll get ultimately, just naturally, we'll gain more business from it. There's no doubt about that. But I think at the end of the day, I think this could, is this a model for other small businesses? Possibly. So, I don't know if I've answered
Oh,
that.
that's great. I just thank you for taking a chance on us, right? Because, I'm sure that there's a few people that knock on your doors asking for donations
Not just a few.
and for help. And this was one you selected, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah,
That's why I'm curious how.
Yeah, we were really excited about it when we got together with Burnsville High, and I know we're
Yep.
short on time here, and that's really cool. I mean, to present the check at halftime and those types of things. This is just on a whole nother level, a much deeper dive and a much more expansive dive. So we're excited about it too, so.
Any other comments or questions? Tim, we appreciate our partnerships with our businesses, our local businesses, and I do remember talking with you this summer or fall. Yes,
Yeah,
it
it
was
was a
it was this
Burnsville
fall
Fire
at the
Muster,
Fire Muster, and I am just so pleased to hear that you were able to connect and find a place to plug in with us, because I'm sure we'll all benefit from it in the end. So thank you very much.
Thank
both.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, turning to the business portion of our meeting tonight, we'll start by approving tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda tonight, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. In the event a board member wishes to discuss an item, that item will be moved for separate consideration. Do we have anything that folks would like to talk about separately? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, I'd like a motion to approve the consent agenda, excuse me. Second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. All right, turning to the new business portion of our meeting, I'd like to invite Dr. Stacy Stanley to the podium. We're going to receive a report on the World's Best Workforce Plan. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Alt, Board of Directors, Superintendent Amoroso, and Luke. Congratulations, Luke. That's really exciting. Thank you for having me here to provide a report tonight on the World's Best Workforce Plan, which aligns with our strategic direction of closing gaps and increasing student achievement for all. So the World's Best Workforce is related to 2013 legislation, which focuses on increased student achievement. There are 5 specific areas connected with World's Best Workforce. All children ready for school, or students are ready for kindergarten. All 3rd graders can read at grade level. All racial and economic achievement gaps are closed. All students are ready for career and college ready, or are ready for career and college, and all students graduate from high school. For Ready for Kindergarten in 191, we use a metric called letter name fluency, and that is from a series of assessments from an organization called AIMSweb, and that's our fall screening. The benchmark is very important because students being able to name their letters fluently within a test, it's a 1-minute test, and they are given letters randomly, is directly correlated with future reading success. And in particular, for our new reading curriculum, we are implementing the Being a Reader, Making Meaning curriculum this year. Students need to be able to name fluently 21 letter sounds before they move into guided reading. And so we look at that metric. This year, we had nearly half of our students enter kindergarten prepared to meeting benchmark or exceeding the benchmark that's set in the fall. And then we also re-benchmark in the winter and then again in the spring. Some strategies that we're using to increase the percentage of students who come into us is, we've expanded our voluntary pre-kindergarten programming into several more of our schools. And then we actually are in a partnership with some of the South Metro districts. It's the Dakota County Birth to 8 Early Intervention Partnership. And with that partnership, we are working with various Dakota County agencies to really identify students who would benefit from early literacy instruction. Very excited about that, getting more students in for the early childhood screening, and then also working with our early childhood programs. The next area is every student read at grade level by 3rd grade. And the Minnesota Department of Education designates that we use the 3rd grade Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment to assess whether or not we're meeting that benchmark. Last year we had, I have to go back. Last year we had about 43% of our students who were meeting that benchmark. Again, some of our strategies that we're working on is that new implementation of that curriculum for Being a Reader. The Being a Reader curriculum focuses on key literacy learning areas, which are phonemic awareness. That is a student's ability to really connect the sounds of letters directly. And then decoding, which is the student's ability to pull together all those letter sounds to form words. And then, of course, fluency, being able to read smoothly and accurately. And then finally, comprehension. And so we were really excited about the curriculum. We saw some strong response to the use of the curriculum in our classrooms for teachers who implemented the curriculum last year. And so we're really excited to get to our mid-year MAP testing screening to find out the impact that that's having. In addition, we are being very focused on our screening and our progress monitoring for our students who may need intervention, and so that we can make certain that we get in there early intervention as soon as possible to make certain that our students are working toward becoming those fluent readers. The next area is all racial and economic achievement gaps closed, specifically in the area of reading. And the state of Minnesota directs school districts to connect the World's Best Workforce Plan to the Achievement Integration Plan. The Achievement Integration Plan monitors those achievement gaps over 3 years. And so you'll see here that over the past 3 years, we've reduced our achievement gap academically in reading just slightly, almost 4% actually, and I do believe that's something that we should be proud of. And then you'll see also for the economic gap, we've also reduced our gaps by about 2.5%, and so we are certainly working toward closing those gaps all the way. The metric we use for all students career and college ready is the ACT. And our spring 2017 mean composite score was 20. Now, our goal is to reach 22 because the research demonstrates that at a 22, students are prepared to perform at a B- or above for college-bearing credit once they go off to college. And so we have increased to 20, and certainly we are seeking to move to that mean composite of 22. Finally, for all students graduate from high school, our data has not come in yet for 2017. That usually arrives to districts in December or January. If we do, though, look at our progress that we've made, in 2015, we were at 85%. In 2016, we were at 86%. And so we are continuing to increase with our progress in all students graduating from high school. So that concludes the report for this evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Stanley. Board members, are there questions? Director Miller.
Thank you. Back to the slide with the The two tables, all racial and economic achievement gaps closed.
Yes.
Reading. Just so I understand this, so on the left, that is the gap, and as it has reduced as it relates to racial demographics, correct?
Correct.
And then on the right, as it relates to economic demographics, as described by free and reduced meals, right?
Correct.
Just, and this isn't particular to you or the district, I find it odd that those are two things put side by side, because racial differences should be non-starters, right? I mean, that should be, in theory, something we can work through by reaching out and stuff. Economics bring a different challenge that are external to the children, and, I mean, do you agree with me? I mean, I'm a little odd that these are put side by side and are a comparison.
It is what the World's Best Workforce focuses on specifically, and that is the
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
specific
I just,
area.
just an observation. I mean, working through cultural differences is something we can handle. I don't know how we can change, if the home dynamic is of an economic strata different from another, it seems we've challenged more on the right than we would be on the left. Our options available to us.
I think the work that we can do is the early intervention piece, really working to identify our students who are performing in the lower percentiles, really use that laser-like focus and intervening based on their needs, both for reading and for mathematics, to ensure that we're really increasing that performance. That is, some leverage that we have at the district level.
Okay, thank you.
Director Schatz, you were. Hi, Stacy. So I have a couple questions. So for kindergarten results, there were some strategies for helping to change those numbers, and the same for third grade, the strategies, the reading curriculum and things like that. But I don't see strategies for the racial and economic achievement gaps closing, or the ACT, or graduation. I guess with graduation rates, you don't know, but for the ACT or for the other results, what are the strategies being used to help change those numbers or continue in the right direction?
Sure. So those are directly related to curriculum and instruction. We have our curriculum review cycle where we are in that continuous improvement cycle for making certain that our curriculum is aligned to state standards, really working closely with our teachers to make certain that we are using high-quality instructional strategies in the classroom. High-quality instruction, core one, what we call tier one core instruction, is the most important tool that we have for closing those gaps for both the racially based gaps as well as the economic based gaps, and high quality instruction is what is needed to ensure that students are performing well on the ACT.
So, okay, sorry, I have a follow-up question with the ACT, and can we get the actual information about how, because when you take the ACT, you can get your test answers. As a parent or as a student, you can get your test answers so that you can find out exactly where you're having difficulty in those sections. Do we get any of that data?
We get the composite score data. As far as the reports, I can check with our data assessment coordinator to determine what reports are specifically available for families.
At the district level, we don't get that. We don't get that individual level of response back. What we do get, in addition to what Stacy's describing, though, is we will get some analysis that will, students also indicate what courses they have taken. So we will get some results back that will tell us, for students that take this sequence of courses, here's where they are. For students that take this sequence of courses, here's where they are. So for example, did they take chemistry? Did they take physics? In what order, or how much math may they have taken? So again, it's all at the district level composite, but it gives us a little bit more information, but certainly not to the level of which questions students struggled with.
Okay, if there's any
piece of information that's certainly helpful to know what, what classes were taken, things like that. If we're talking about a laser focus on the curriculum and what students are taking, that level of detail, which may not be available, to the district, which I understand it's certainly available to families, but that would be something very helpful, to know for designing curriculum.
We do get some strand information, so it will let us know which strands are lower, which strands we need to increase the rigor in. So we do get that down to that strand level, but that's as far as it goes.
Dr. Luth, you had a question?
I'm going to go back to the slide that Director Miller was talking about. One comment, it's not really a comment. I wish I could quote exactly where I'm remembering this from, but the question was brought up about particularly the economic achievement gap. And as I recall, somewhere in my past year on this board, there was some information provided where, in fact, there can be a stronger correlation on an economic basis than there is actually on a racial basis. They're both equally prominent for us as a district. And so I'm not questioning what you're asking, but at the same time, I don't want that to be felt. I feel these are both equally important for us to know about and to track. The economic achievement allows us to cross it's a different way of segmenting this. And it also lends some credence to the other number and back and forth rather than just looking at one. So I'm just going to put that out there, just a statement, I guess. The question I have, and I apologize, Dr. Stanley, because I probably should have presented with this, so feel free to say I'll get that to you later. But when I look at this as a 3-year reduction, if I was to look at this as a graph, is that reduction fairly steady every year? Is it declining? Is it increasing? Do you recall or know?
It was fairly steady each year. I'd have to try to envision the information, but I feel like it was 1.21, and then I can't remember the other year, but I mean,
It's
it was
pretty steady.
pretty steady for the
Which I think,
reduction.
as much as I'd love to see it be accelerating, a good steady improvement over 3 years is also a very, very positive thing. And thank you. I've been waiting to see a number like this for a long, long time. And I really hope that, as I go through my last year here on the board, but that you will be able to see this continue, for years to come. Because obviously it's a slower pace. We'd like it to be faster. But if it's nice and steady, that's okay too. And I want to thank everybody in this district, because there's no single person that makes this happen. And so I want to thank, I'm pleased about that, and I'm actually quite pleased to hear that it's kind of steady. That's probably, in some ways, a better thing, because if you've got fast accelerating, is that truly sustainable either? And quite often, what goes up fast has a tendency to come down fast, maybe. But anyway, thank you so much for that, and that piece was heartwarming for me, personally. Thank you.
We felt
you,
the
Director.
same in the Systems Improvement and Student Achievement Department as well. Yeah.
Director Vandenboom.
Thank you, Cheryl. So correct me if I'm, we currently have one report that we're required by statute to send to the state of Minnesota, MDE, and that is the World's Best Workforce Report. Is that correct?
Correct. That's submitted every
That's
year
around
in December.
Student achievement and academics. Does this report sort of represent, a summary and totality of what we plan to send to the state of Minnesota this year?
Yes, it does. So really, we report this very specific information around improvement. The state of Minnesota also looks to make certain that we are making sure that our highest quality teachers are in the classrooms with our neediest students. And that is something that I work with Mr. Sovine on, the Executive Director of Human Resources, to provide that information. It's via our STAR report, basically.
there used to be things like student achievement reports, and there were a number of reports that ended up getting rolled up into this World's Best Workforce report, but there is very little, if any, information in here about how we're doing as a district. And it's, I'm even confused a little bit by some of the numbers that are presented. To show our graduations rates as TBD every year, I mean, if every year I see the same report and we say TBD or not available, it doesn't really tell me as a board member anything at all. And I don't know how the Minnesota Department of Education is going to read what your 4-year graduation rate's not available in our annual report and say that's okay. Without, and we talked about what's the annual, or at least a trend or some sort of additional information to kind of give us a context of, are we getting better or are we getting worse? And I'm curious on the achievement gaps. I just need a little help maybe with the math, because, you know, we show sort of the baseline in spring of 14 and then the new number in the spring of 17, and then the 3-year reduction. Is that supposed to be simple? So if I was at 32.7 and should I subtract 28.7 and get 3.7? Or, because the math doesn't work for me. And so I'm trying to understand why that was an improvement, and then the overall gap between sort of, is 28.7 currently the current gap between this particular racial and economic gap, you know, and the white students, essentially the white students. So,
Correct.
So we've, over 3 years, we've made a 3.7% increase, so it's less than 1% per year on a 28% gap. I mean, if I project, you know, if I project a 1% and I need to get 28 more of them, this says that we're not going to close the gap for 28 years, correct?
I mean, certainly our goal is to reduce the gap in a more rapid manner.
Yep.
And
on the
over-
economic side, it's even worse from my perspective. So, I mean, my short answer with what little data we have here is it's not good enough. I'm really concerned that we're not moving, and I appreciate any improvements, trust me. As a board member, we certainly want to see improvements and so forth, but that's a long timeline, and as I remember some of the, you know, ESSA stuff, those timelines are not 28 years that we have to close the gaps by. So it's just painfully little information about where we are as a district, and if this is the only report that the board is required to receive for the entire year, and again, it's required to receive. I know that we can optionally request additional reports and so forth, but I mean, if this report is the one report that MDE gets on our district in a year, there's not a lot here. I don't know how else to say it. So, well, thank you for the answers. I appreciate the answers. I don't know what else I can add to that.
Director Schmidt.
All right, thank you. A few questions. Actually, Director Schatz sparked a question for me, but before I get to that, just to confirm, so the presentation we received isn't the formal report we submit. There's a...
Correct. There's a template
Yeah.
that the Minnesota Department of Education requires
And so
us
I
to
would
complete.
request maybe we could see that template as well, you know, just so we can see what the formal report looks like. This presentation is fine for my purposes. You know, back to the ACT part, you know, one of the things, so I know that's our benchmark, all 11th graders take it, but one of the things I believe to be true is many of our students may not give it an effort, so to speak. They just go in and fill in all A's or all B's. And so, you know, no testing is ever going to be perfect, but, you know, maybe we can't, you know, strand to the exact questions or areas, but can we at least, you know, identify clearly tests that have not been given a proper effort, right? You know, to basically factor those out of the number, because obviously those are bringing down the overall results. And
I suspect it's a larger number than just a few, so I do think it has an impact on the overall results.
Of course, the data that's submitted to us is the overall results, and so we're not able to weed out tests.
But by weed out, so we only get the composite, they don't say, okay, you had 600 students take it and 200 scored, between 0 and 9. They don't give, or not even by student, just, they don't give, you had 5 students score above 33, you had, they don't give ranges or anything.
I can certainly ask Connie Erickson to dig more into that and provide the school board with that information.
Because that would be interesting to me, because I understand what the mean composite is, I'm just not sure that's an accurate reflection of the students who actually tried.
And certainly testing conditions are very important, and we take those very seriously, at the high school. And our assistant principals who work with our students for testing, they are encouraging our students to do their very best on the assessment, because this does impact their acceptance into post-secondary institutions. And certainly it's just important for us to know, because they still have a year of high school left, and so that we can know how to serve them in the classroom.
Yeah, and as we know, a lot of our students have already decided on career readiness versus college readiness, and may not have the same attitude towards the test, because they've chosen a career where they won't need this to get into a higher institution.
Yeah, I think that the assessment is called the career in college readiness, because there is a certain skill set that students really need minimum to go into the workforce in a place where they have a certain level of income potential, where they have a certain level of complexity in their work environment. And I think that that is why the ACT is focused on both career and college readiness.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Courier, did you have anything you'd like to add? No. No? All right, all right. I just thought I'd ask.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stacy. Really appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
All right, next, we are being asked to, we're receiving a report on fall enrollment. I'd like to invite Lisa Ryder to the podium, our Executive Director of Business Services. Welcome, Lisa.
So, thank you and good evening. Tonight is typically November of each year, in which we begin to bring to the board the information on our fall information, fall enrollment information. So tonight we have for you some slides that will help you to understand what our fall enrollment looks like, as well as what the makeup of that population of our students is for the beginning of this school year. As we talk later in the year regarding budget, that's when we will be bringing you the projections, as they will be the basis of our revenue projections at that time for budget purposes. So as we begin this evening, there's a couple of new slides that we've added in here right up front, because we felt that it was time to kind of summarize exactly who are we serving in our early ed programs. And so we serve pretty much 3 different groups of students in our early ed programs. The first being the early childhood special education, and the students who are served through the early childhood special education are funded by the state and federal funds. And we keep track of that information through our general fund, and the ages of our students in that program are typically birth to pre-K, through pre-K. The voluntary pre-kindergarten program we began last year, and this is funded by state grant through the general fund, okay? That's a little bit new and different for us in the last year and the current year, in the fact that we're handling that through the general fund. School readiness has been around for a while, as has been the early childhood special education, the first category of students. School readiness is funded by tuition and state pathways scholarships, but through the Community Education Fund, okay? So there is some distinction as to where we track that information, and it is really largely dependent upon whether or not the students who are enrolled in the programs are enrolled through a free program to them, which then means it would be into the general fund and in either one of the first 2 program areas, or whether or not they are on a sliding scale, possibly with regard to fees related to the school readiness program. And as we look at this information for the last 2 years, comparing fall of 2016 to fall of 2017, you'll see that we have a chart that visually shows quite the increase in our student counts. So in the fall of 2016, last school year, we were serving 572 students, whereas now this fall, for this school year, we are serving 715 students. So we're very pleased about that. And this increase of 143 is largely due to the opportunities that we've been able to expand across our schools. In the voluntary pre-kindergarten program mostly, but you can also see there's other increases in the other two programs as well. From here forward, throughout this presentation, will be pretty much all kindergarten through 12th grade students that we're referring to, and not the pre-K or earlier ed students. So as we take a look at this is our slide for our elementary schools, and this is the fall comparison of 16 versus the fall of 17 comparison for grades K through 5. If you recall last year when we showed you this slide, we had a little bit of a distinction between the two different years because one was K6 and the other was K5. Now both K5, and you can see by school what that enrollment looks like for our elementary students. Our fall count for 2016 was 4,115, whereas the fall count here for 17 is 3,942, a decline of 173. The next slide is our secondary, and this is a 2-year comparison, again, of fall 16 and fall 17 for grades 6 through 12. And so as you can see here, we have this broken down by school. The fall count for 16 was 4,799 versus the fall count for 17 of 4,648, a decline of 151. The counts that you see here do include our BOZ students as well as our BEST students, BOZ being our Burnsville Alternative High School and BEST being our Burnsville Egan Savage Transition Program, which is housed now at our former ASC building over on River Ridge. As we look at the combination of both the elementary and the secondary, and we take a look back for the 5-year trend, you can see the numbers in each year as to how many students we were serving. This is, again, an October 1 head count. So keep in mind, I want to talk a little bit about October 1. October 1 is a fall count, and it is not necessarily like partials for kids at all, right? So it's basically, as of October 1, how many kids were in the seats at that point in time that we were serving, okay? And as we take a look at these numbers, you'll see that the 17, 18, we consider them preliminary, because that means that we are in the process of submitting our data. We have until December 31st to submit the final counts for the fall, and yet so do all of the other schools in the state. Okay, so if a student gets listed by 2 different school districts, that isn't allowed. And so there'll be an editing process. The error has to be corrected so that only one school can claim that student at that time. The rest of the years are finalized fall counts. We then break down our fall count by the grade level enrollment, and so you can see that listed here on this slide. Total count, 8,590 for K through 12, again, not including our early ed, and the seat count as of October 1. Your 12th grade is going to, again, include your best students as well as the BOZ students, and this may include students who might be with us for, say, an extended semester to be able to finalize some credits that they might have needed to do in the previous, and didn't get accomplished in the previous year of their senior year. Those kinds of things, that's why you kind of see a jump there on the 12th grade. All right, so then we're going to turn now our attention to taking this information for the fall count and talking a little bit about the composition of our students and the population we have here. So we're going to begin with special education, and it's broken down by building. We do have some lines across the top there. The one that goes all the way across all the schools is the district average, and that is at 14%. And the lines that go over pretty much the yellow, which is our elementary average of 13.5%. And our secondary average is 14.5%. And this, again, is for our K-12 students served through special education by building. The next slide talks about the limited English proficiency by building. And again, we have some lines across these graphs so that you can kind of see what is the district average, which is 17.6%. Our elementary average is 25.5%, and our secondary average is 10.9%. Just a note about this, when we're talking about limited English proficiency, typically there is a limit as to the funding that the state provides, and it is based upon the number of years a particular student may have been involved in the program. Also note that when our students come to us and they are in need of some limited English proficiency services, they're going to be in possibly different levels of need. And so we staff based upon the level of need. And oftentimes what occurs is they'll receive that need, or the services, excuse me, during the early years of their education with us, and by the time they do reach the secondary schools, they may no longer require that. And so you see a significant change in that percentage, largely due to that. The next slide talks about our enrollment by ethnicity. And again, this is K-12. For the 17-18 school year, we have 43% white, 28% black, 18% Hispanic, 10% Asian, and 1% American Indian. These numbers are also, again, as of October 1. And then we have our free and reduced eligibility trend, and we're showing this for a 5-year trend, so you can kind of see how that compares. Our percentage for free and reduced price meals has come down now from the last 3 years to 47.1 on district average. This is preliminary fall counts, but at that point in time, as of October 1, there is a timeline and a process that our families need to go through for applying, and we waited until October 23rd to grab these numbers because that was kind of when that process was kind of complete for this year, for the start. These numbers are changing on a daily basis. I'll say that because that's just always the case for our enrollment. But this gives you an idea of what our trend has looked like. And then we take a look at this slide and the next slide are all around the school choice. Now, this information is not about the current year and not about fall data. This data, or this slide, takes a look at the data for last school year, the 2016-2017 school year, and this does include our pre-K through 12th grade. And so the total students that we served in 16-17 were 9,029 students, and that included 8,459 of our residents, with 570 students coming from outside of our resident area as non-residents. So we have 570 students that are coming into our district who don't live within our district boundaries. And then you see the graph off to the right that shows of all of our residents who live here in Burnsville-Egan-Savage School District, we have 8,459 that we served, whereas 269 students chose to attend charter schools, 79 were tuitioned out for other services, and 1,900 of our residents are attending elsewhere. The next slide takes the information that you have on the right-hand side that is red and that is said to be 1,900 and breaks down that 1,900 by where else are they attending if not with us. And so the second slide here shows that information, and you can kind of see how that's broken down. There's quite a long list of various different places that we then just kind of group together as miscellaneous others. Otherwise, you do see the names of the school community as well as the count of students that are our residents attending the other district. And we come back to the slide again of the grade level enrollment, which we did see earlier. It is repetitive, and I wanted to end on this slide so that you could kind of know that this is our starting point as we begin our conversations and discussions around how we're projecting this enrollment forward and where we're going to begin from. So it always starts from that fall count then. And that concludes the report on enrollment for fall.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I'll open it up for questions. Director Miller.
Just a couple clarifications. I believe if I remember from last year on the slide titled School Choice PK through 12, Houston Public Schools is listed on, that's an online program, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. And then The slide, free and reduced eligibility trend. Eligibility, I would interpret that to mean they're economically eligible, not necessarily that they are participating, but it sounded from the way you were reading it, it's more the participation.
Okay, well, let me clarify. Thank you for that. It is an eligibility, so our families are asked, and actually, we want all of our families to complete the educational benefits application. As this application does serve the purpose of identifying the eligibility for free or reduced meal, and through our food and nutrition system. However, it also serves a good portion of funding for our school district in that those that are eligible, whether or not they utilize that for free or reduced meals, if you're eligible, then that it counts towards the calculation that is done on many different types of grants or other types of funding, but primarily for us, compensatory funding. And so the concentration that we have within our school buildings comes into play, and it's really important that all of our families are engaged in that process. And that's something I think that we would like to see happen a little bit more across all of our schools and more routinely. I know it does take some time for our families to at least just take a look at the scale. If they're not eligible, they know this because of where things are at for them, they can waive the process. But at least that allows then for everyone to kind of make sure that this is something also to make them aware of the fact that should they come upon some hardship, they understand what the scale is and what the levels are that they're considered for free or reduced meals.
So do we have a grip on the gap between eligibility and participation? And is it a very significant gap at all?
If they're eligible and not participating,
Yes,
you mean?
correct.
I can't say that I've analyzed that myself. We could look into that. I anticipate at this point that we have a good, at this point, we're feeding all of our students who are coming through the line. And this is becoming more and more of a behind-the-scenes thing when it comes to the food and nutrition, which is where I believe it belongs. But it's really rather prominent for us when it comes to the funding aspect. And so it's kind of shifting its required need. But at the same time, if we do not have families completing the application, then we have some funding at risk. So we want to make sure that families know and understand the purpose of the application and the many things that it can bring. It also helps us to identify families that may be eligible for fee waivers or things of that nature, should that be a case that comes into play for their children.
One last thing then, back to the elementary two-year comparison seat count slide.
Yep.
This might be for either you or Cindy. It looks like Gideon Pond is the sole standout here. Do we have some anecdotal information about that?
No.
Okay, that's fair.
We, for the last few years, we have known that Pond has been attracting students, and this year we really are seeing that play out in their numbers.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Schmidt?
Oh, sorry.
No? Oh, okay. Director Vandenboom?
Just a lot of really great information here, Lisa. The obvious question was in Hidden Valley with that really big spike in the LEP. Usually I was kind of looking for, if it's that way at Hidden Valley, you'd also see it at sort of the corresponding middle school, and I don't. So what was, and I know these are just facts, but wow, that's a huge difference from a lot of schools that are close by. Is there just a pocket of limited language learners, in that particular area? I know there was, but I didn't realize it was at least double.
It's interesting that you raised that because my first glance at it, I thought maybe we had a problem with data, and we verified that is not the case. And then at the same time, I had an opportunity to meet with our Finance Advisory Committee this week. And so as we took a glance at this slide here, and there were people involved in the committee who are like, that is absolutely true, and it is absolutely phenomenal to visit the school and see how it truly is like an international opportunity to see, an international school in which you can see the many different cultures within our community. And it was exciting to listen to a few of our community members discuss Hidden Valley in particular and how it really is embracing our ethnicity across our schools. And so that is the case for us at Hidden Valley, and we do find that as we're serving our students of limited English proficiency, depending upon their level of service need, then that's reflected in our staffing too for that particular school.
It is reflected on
And Superintendent Amoroso had a comment.
To your point about how high that is at Hidden Valley, and yet it's not playing out the same way at the middle level. As Lisa mentioned, a student qualifies as EL for only so many years. Well, 3 would be awesome. I believe now we can go up to, is it 5 or 7? So, but our goal then is, like so many other things, our goal is to provide that strong instruction and intervention early so that we can get a student to benchmark or performing at grade level as early as possible. And that's certainly the case with EL services. If a student comes into kindergarten needing EL services, hopefully we would be able to have moved that student out of that program by the time they would go into that middle level. And so that's part of what you're seeing when you see such low numbers at the middle level compared to what the numbers would be at the elementaries. Does that make sense?
Director Schmid.
Just a quick one, as long as we're on the subject, and I see Stacy Silvine in the back. So I assume we while this is as of October 1st, I assume we knew this and we've staffed accordingly for the limited language proficiency, meaning we have the right amount of staff at, for instance, Hidden Valley to handle that versus, one of the lower numbers. So did we know that at the beginning of the year, or have we adjusted?
I believe Dr. Stacy Stanley has worked to make sure that those levels are appropriate for each of the different schools, and it's an ever-changing
Sure.
Item that needs to be monitored, and so at the beginning of every school year, that's something that takes a little bit of effort.
Director Luth.
Thank you. The slide identified as school choice 2016, 2017.
Yep.
Yep, the other one.
Other
The
one
two,
before?
that one.
There you go.
Thank you. A statement and a respectful, hopefully respectful request. The statement that I'd like to make is if I look at the part of the pie, if you will, that's resident attending elsewhere, tuitioned out, residents attending charters, basically students that are leaving our district and taking their money with them, putting it bluntly, and subtract the 570 that we were able to attract into the district. I have a net number of, depending how you want to look at it, if you want to keep the tuition in or not or whatever, but it's approaching 1,600, the net that we're losing. And I looked at the numbers in here, and the average size for an elementary school in our district right now is roughly 400. And so the statement I want to make is we're losing the equivalent of 4 elementary schools every year, certainly this year. I've said this before in past years, and I'll say it again. This is beyond academic achievement and so on. This is the single biggest issue facing this district. If you were to take those students that are leaving our district and dollarize it, it would far exceed what we're getting in the 2 questions that just were approved by our public here and a couple weeks ago, or a week ago. What a difference that would make. Interesting enough, what an overcrowding problem that would cause. And I continue to have, for years now, you need to close the school, you need to close the school. We need to fill a school, folks. We need to fill 4 of them, in my opinion. Now, this won't change overnight, but that's my statement. My respectful questions for information, would it be possible to get this data for the last 5 years? Would that be a very onerous, I don't want to.
No, we've
Okay.
got that.
I would appreciate that, and obviously to the rest of the board. So I'm going to go back and take a look at the trending of the last 5 years with this data, and see if it's getting worse, getting better. It's been getting worse, folks. I'm hoping we're finally leveling out, but I'll have to take, I can't tell from this data yet. So I'd respectfully ask if that could be provided.
Certainly.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you. Dr. Schatz?
Can we go back to the other slide that has, the other school choice slide? Right, this one, yep. So is it possible to know does this data include the addresses actually of where these students are residing?
So I have only count data on the report I work off from, but we are working on addressing the why behind this, and so I think that our starting point are going to be identifying any of our students that are in our database for past enrollments, that we have their information from while they were with us. Okay, so the names and addresses there, right? Obtaining the names and addresses for students who were never with us is far more difficult, and I don't know that we could make that happen.
Certainly.
Yep.
Yep.
But, so that's in progress and something that we're working to gather.
Okay, because as I live on a border area of the district, and I know a lot of the families that are in that area open enroll to 191 simply because that elementary school was closer than any of the 191 schools. And so they open enroll to that school because that's the one in their neighborhood, and that's the one that their children's friends go to. And then just by virtue of they've been in that school district, they open enroll then to the middle schools and high schools, from there. So that's why my question is, and there's not much we can do about that. And so that's why my question is, where if these open enrollees are mainly on the borders of our district, while that's not a non-issue, that's less of an issue than really anything that we can do much about because they live in the border of where they are. While it's ideally, and I certainly understand why that might be the case, of why they would make that choice. So that's really the only reason behind my question of if there's any way to identify, or if there's a way to guess a certain percentage or something for us to level out this data a little bit based on people who are living on the fringes.
I think the shape of our district really is a factor for us. I mean, just when you look at the map and how it is spread as it is, and the main streets that we have coming through, or highways coming through our community as well, I mean, it all plays into it. And proximity is a major factor for families as they make their choice.
Director Courier?
To build on both Lisa and Darcy's comments, I had already retired from this district as an administrator and then got employed in Shakopee and was taking good old 101 to work. And then Bob got us a staff development opportunity at Rosemont across from Valley Fair. I never realized that was 191 school district. That's how amazing. And in fact, I believe Shakopee didn't realize, if you recall, when Shakopee came to ask for some relief from us, they had originally gone to Shakopee, thinking that.
Right. They went for the abatement. They went to Shakopee.
They went to Shakopee, and it was.
And then they figured out that it wasn't in Shakopee.
It was in our district. So that east to west, we are very wide east to west, not as wide north to south. I personally like our strategies right now to be competitive. Back in the early 90s, historical, that's when school choice began to have traction in Minnesota, and it's expanded and expanded and expanded, and now we're here, so we have to compete. And so I just wanted to elaborate that I'm not as worried about the borders, losing people on the borders. I think if we stay competitive with our good programs, that we'll be okay as a school district.
Director Vandenboom, did you have?
Did you want to say something?
Yes.
Our communications department is working with Morris Leatherman, and we are going to be gathering feedback from families that were in our district who chose to leave, so that we make sure that as we are making decisions moving forward, budget decisions, programming decisions, that we are aware of the actual data that we can gather on why people made those decisions. So that will be helpful to us in answering some of these questions rather than sort of anecdotally, gathering data anecdotally and trying to make some assumptions. So that should help.
Thank you, Cindy. Dr. Vandenboom.
I just can't leave the presentation. I have to, when I saw the graph on free and reduced, and that it finally went down, I've watched this for years, for the entire time I've been on the board, I watched this number, and it has steadily gone up, up, up. I am so glad to see that number go down this year, and I can't wait to see year's number, and hopefully it's down again, because that's really the socioeconomic status kind of indicator for us, and what a relief to see that turning around. And so that's why I say a lot of great information in here. To Darcy's point, I live in a neighborhood where literally one block in 3 different directions. I'm 3 minutes from Eastview High School. I'm probably 2 minutes from Greenleaf Elementary, which is all 196. There are certain things that are about location, location, location. But, there is a big, large group, and I think collectively, I think our intent is really to focus on the ones where it's clearly not an obvious, reason like location, 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 for what those reasons are. And it might simplify maybe the data work that you're trying to do as well. So, but anyway, thank you. I had to indicate, or talk about that a little bit. Thank you on that.
Any other comments or questions? I have just a couple. 2 comments on retention, but in different ways. It would be interesting to see our retention rates of pre-K students over time. How many are staying? And
So Gerald, I think that'll help if we get the 5-year trend. We'll be able to see at least 5 years of that.
and then retention of a different kind, it actually is the same kind, but in a slightly different vein. I think our challenge, Dee Dee, talking to, dovetailing your comment about being competitive, our challenge is really going to be figuring out what we need to do to retain students and being nimble with our staffing to, for example, we know that Gideon Pond has been a big draw of late, making sure that we're doing everything that we can to really optimize retention of families that do live here and want to continue to send their kids here. And then finally, one comment on free and reduced lunch. It's an ongoing conversation with families, right? Because we know that, some families consistently are out of being eligible, or consistently ineligible. Some families are consistently eligible, and then there are those that kind of fluctuate in and out. And it's really important for our families to know that option is there, and that really makes it quite a challenge for us when we know that people are popping in and out of it. So, great conversation. Thank you, everybody, and thank you very much, Lisa.
You're welcome.
And the final item on our new business section, we'll stay with Lisa. We are being asked to adopt a resolution canvassing returns of votes of school district special election.
So we are very grateful and thankful to our community as November 7th resulted in a significant support for our 2 questions. And so tonight is when we canvass those returns of the votes. We have been working, Jamie significantly has been working with the county to finalize everything and cross all those Ts and dot those Is. And I have to say that this process this year was one that was quite different from our past years in the fact that the county has shifted a little bit of the responsibilities more towards us and working through this. And I want to take this opportunity to give some real kudos to Jamie for all the work that she did in arranging and organizing the election process. The election judges that we had across our district, they knew what they were doing, and it was really a smooth process that day, so we were grateful also for that and all the work that it took to get that done. I would like to read the resolution so that it's in the record as well. The resolution for canvassing returns of votes for school district special election. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 191, Dakota and Scott Counties, Minnesota, as follows. It is hereby found, determined, and declared that the special election of the voters of this school district held on November 7th, 2017, was in all respects duly and legally called and held. As specified in the attached abstract and return of votes cast, a total of 7,834 voters of the district voted at said special election on the question of renewing the operating levy authority of the district. A total of 4,923 voters voting in favor of the question 1, and a total of 1,628 voters voting against the question 1. The question was approved. A total of 4,143 voters voting in favor of the question 2, and the total of 2,390 voters voting against the question 2. The question was approved. The clerk is hereby directed to certify the results of the election to the county auditor of each county in which the school district is located in whole or in part.
Thank you, Lisa. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second? Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the resolution as read, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. Turning to the report section of our meeting, we will start with committee reports. And let's start with the Technology Committee with Director Vandenboom.
Thank you, Chair. The Technology Committee met on Tuesday afternoon. Doug Johnson, Bob Weiler, Rachel Gordon, Jim Schmid, Lisa Ryder, Cindy Amoroso, and myself were present at the meeting, along with 3 representatives from Emergent Networks, the vendor partner that the district has selected and engaged with to conduct an independent, comprehensive network health audit. The entire meeting was devoted to reviewing the 26-page statement of work from Emergent Networks and discussing the key project activities, deliverables, and timelines. The team from Emergent presented the material and answered a variety of clarifying questions, and it was a very detailed sort of statement of work, if you will. The 6-phase project has already been started with a completion timeline in early February. Each phase has very specific deliverables, including reports of key findings and go-forward recommendations. The February early spring project completion deadline will allow the board and administrative team time to review and digest the forward-looking recommendations and key findings to help us proactively budget as needed for critical infrastructure needs as early as next school year. The main agenda topic for our upcoming Technology Committee meeting on December 5th will be a review of recommended changes to the acceptable use policy based on our October meeting discussions, and a delayed review of the communication plan details for technology disruptions. In addition, we do anticipate that each agenda for the next few months will include a brief status update regarding the progress of the network health audit. This concludes the Technology Committee report for this evening.
Thank you. Next, we will turn to our Policy Review Committee with Director Schmid.
The Policy Committee will actually have its regularly scheduled meeting next Tuesday on November 21st, so nothing to report at this time.
Great, thank you. Next, turning to our Student Performance and Achievement Committee with Director Courier.
The committee met on November 1st. Dave Watkins and Dr. Stanley presented draft scorecard information. Basically, we went through the draft data presentation highlights. Director Miller, whose vocation is dealing with statistics and presentation of them, gave insightful feedback on presentation. Then, using discussion questions, the committee gave feedback on final scorecard design and content. At the November 29th meeting, we will be reviewing the final draft.
Thank you. Next, turning to the Negotiating Committee with Director Luth.
Fairly short report, but negotiations, we had a session with our BEA counterparts last night. It lasted approximately an hour. Another one is now scheduled, help me, fellow members, December 13th. We have another session scheduled Wednesday, the 13th.
Thank you. Next, we'll go back to Director Courier with the Intermediate School District 917.
Thank you. The regular 917 monthly meeting was held on Tuesday, November 7th. It was held in the New Chance Training Room located at the Juvenile Services Center in Hastings. Prior to the regular meeting, the 917 board had a tour of the locked section of the Juvenile Center. It was given by a soon-to-graduate and soon-to-be-released inmate. ISD 917 is responsible for the education of juvenile inmates. The training room where our meeting was held is in the unlocked section of the center. Highlights of the meeting included good news reports from the two program administrators, Melissa Schaller, Director of Special Education, and Eric Van Brocklin, Principal of the Secondary School Programs and Sites. We also received a report on the Anthony Lewis Center. This is a program that, quote, offers a full range of general and special education courses to students participating in this day treatment program focused on substance abuse. Students are served from ages 12 to 18. It is located in our district, but students attending not only come from 917 districts, but from the region. It is owned and operated by On Belay, Minnesota, Inc. ISD 917 provides the general and special education services for the students enrolled in the program. Regular business included reviewing of drafts of new mandatory policies, final reading of the Level 200 policies, approval of medical and dental insurance renewals for 2017, and approval of a contract between 917 and Community Transition Interagency Committee, or CTIC. And that concludes the report.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, ties report from Director Luth.
Thank you. Yesterday, the ties Joint Powers Board had their annual meeting. At the annual meeting, we are required, needs a quorum of 2/3 of the members or the owners of the ties organization. There are 48 districts that make up ties. 37 districts had representatives, at least one of their either school board or superintendent or school board representative there. So we had 77% of our districts present. We had 53 specific representatives at the meeting out of a potential of 96, 6 of which were board vacant positions, of which there were no people offered to fill those. So basically, we had 90 potential, and we had 53. So we had approximately 59% then of our reps present. 32 were superintendents, 21 were board members. The agenda is really pretty simple, pretty perfunctory. There were, the business meeting portion, there were 2 items of business. Business number 1 was to approve the minutes and actions therein of last year's November 16, 2016 annual meeting. This was approved on a voice vote unanimously. The second item of business was to approve the minutes and the actions therein of the executive committee meeting minutes from November of 2016 through October of 2017. A voice vote was called. It was clear that the ayes had it, but there was enough number of clear nay votes that it was determined to then have a roll call vote, which was then conducted. Back to my notes here. The roll call vote resulted in 40 aye votes, and there were 13 nay votes, so there was a 75% approval of that particular action item at the meeting. I would also note that, as we do here, Any action item is a motion, a second, and then an opportunity for people to discuss, make comment, questions, and so on. Neither business item had any conversation whatsoever that was offered. They went straight to the vote. At the conclusion of that portion, we then had two other items on the agenda for the day. And pardon me, I've got lots of pieces of paper here, but there was, the audit report was presented for the year. I'll give a quick summary on that. That will be distributed electronically to the board soon. It will actually go out to all members, but per our chair, it will get then distributed out to you. But I take this from the management report portion. Based on our audit of TIE's financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2017, we have issued an unmodified opinion on TIE's basic financial statements. It did include an emphasis of a matter of going concern paragraph, which I will discuss further in a minute here. Just that folks know, an unmodified opinion is as good as it gets. Okay, that's a very positive audit in terms of their findings. There was one reported deficiency in TIE's internal controls, which was limited segregation of duties due to the size of the organization. This is not one of materiality, and I will tell you that it has been there every year that I have been a part of the TIE's organization. The resulting of our testing disclosed no instances of noncompliance required to be reported under government auditing standards. We reported no findings based on our testing of the district's compliance with Minnesota laws and regulations. All items found in last year's audit were resolved. In regards to the comment I made before about emphasis a matter of going concern, let me get to that portion here for a second. As expected, due to the, some of that has been discussed before in work session and so on, the negative concerns of some of the financials, the company financial statements have been prepared assuming TIE's will continue as a going concern. As shown in the accompanying financial statements, TIE's has suffered a significant loss from operations in the current fiscal year and continues to experience cash flow challenges whereby cash and investments net of borrowing is consistent at a deficit. Further, TIE's has adopted a deficit budget for the current fiscal year of 2018, which you are aware of. These conditions do raise substantial doubt about TIE's ability to continue as a going concern. The financial statements do not include any adjustments that might result from the outcome of this uncertainty. So that was the audit report. Details will come to you. The full audit report will come to you at a later time. That was the one item. There was a handful of questions, but nothing of major consequence, I guess I would call. The final item on the agenda then was what was called a call to action. It was presented by our executive director, Mark Wallach. And I'll summarize some of the key pieces of this. There's a deck that will also come to you that will lay this out in more detail for you. The call to action was that member districts assess their current business relationship with TIE's and determine the work that is needed to unwind from all business relationships with TIE's and replace with suitable providers. A template has been or will be distributed shortly that is for districts to use if they so choose to help them understand and do an internal analysis of what services they get and the costs associated with those. Furthermore, a special meeting of the Joint Powers Board is scheduled to occur on January 24th, 2018. At that time, two choices will be presented to the Joint Powers ownership members. Choice A is to dissolve the Joint Powers Agreement. That decision requires a quorum. Well, no, I think we decided it doesn't require a quorum. I'm sorry, this is some notes before the meeting. The exact items are in there. But it will, requires a quorum of the districts to be there, just like the meeting yesterday. I'm sorry, yes. And at this time, the intent is to bring that with a request for a timeframe of 24 months for an orderly wind down of all ties-related activities in all school districts. The term soft landing was used yesterday, that all districts deserve the opportunity to have a soft landing. There's a number of, obviously, services, products, et cetera, including our own. There are more details I won't go into now, but that's essentially, decision A would be to dissolve the joint powers agreement. Choice B would be to remain as a joint powers agreement organization and look to update governance, bylaws, and membership agreements in some manner to be determined if that is the choice of the joint membership. A majority of those present is what's needed to determine. It's a choice of either do we dissolve as an organization as ties or we don't. Furthermore, just to get a little bit more detail for you, there obviously is a lot of complexity as you look at those two choices for each and every one of the 48 districts, including our own. I'm trying to get back to my notes here again. And so specifically then, ties will be providing by December 20th a little bit more of a potential cost breakdown based on some number of scenarios and the assumptions associated with those scenarios. So for example, if they may, I'm not saying they will, but right now, the management of the organization believes they need 24 months. They may bring that along with the associated assumptions from a cost of what that would be to keep the organization going. They also may bring in a scenario where it's 18 months, for example. Don't know. A lot of that. And so there'll be an opportunity then to get some additional information to help districts make a very difficult decision that goes far beyond ties dissolving or not, quite frankly, is how they proceed to go forward. So that was presented yesterday as the final item of the meeting. And with that, I will conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Are there any other board assignment reports? Yes, Director Kerr.
The bottom section, I went to the Association of Metropolitan School Districts. Do you want a quick report? The AMSD regular monthly meeting was held on Friday, November 3rd in St. Paul. The executive committee report was an update on the Reimagine Minnesota project that we participated in. There was a federal update by Dan Solomon from Senator Franken's office, and the 2017 AMSD presentation of the Friend of Public Education Award to Governor Dayton, accepted by Brenda Casilius. I've been forwarding the AMSD reports that I get from Scott Kroonquist to you. Today's, of course, had the link to today's Minnesota Supreme Court decision on the governor's line item votes of the legislature's appropriation were constitutional under Article 4, Section 23 of the Minnesota Constitution. The Constitution does not allow the judiciary to order funding for the legislative branch in the absence of appropriation, and the record establishes that the legislature has funding to sustain it until it reconvenes in regular session. And I'll continue to forward AMSD emails to you.
Great, thank you. Any other assignment reports?
Well, just to let people know, so MSBA, there's a pre-delegate assembly this Saturday, and then a couple weeks later, there's the full delegate assembly over a Friday, Saturday. So lots of fun with legislation, if you will, for our MSBA. I don't know if you're planning to.
I'm going to try the webinar.
I was considering that too. So it's Saturday morning, or it's watch it on a webinar for the pre-delegate stuff, and I might join you on that.
To see what it's like. It's the first time that they're offering it, from what I recall.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, so next, we'll turn to Luke and get our student representative report.
Thank you. I have two major, one event that happened in the past and one ongoing event that are currently happening at Burnsville High School. The first thing I would like to report would be the Discover BHS Night. This occurred on Thursday, November 2nd, where Burnsville High School hosted Discover BHS Night. And this was mainly an opportunity focused towards parents and guardians, because a lot of times parents, they either drop their kids off at school or, they leave after their kids leave for the school bus or whatever. But a lot of times the parents don't actually see what goes on at the high school and what new facilities, especially with our new updates, as this being the second year of our new updated school building. So this is a huge opportunity for mainly geared towards parents and guardians to see the new updates that are building, new updates and additions that our building has had. So parents, when they got there, they could either partake in self-guided tours to see the school for themselves, or the NHS and Burnsville Strong members at our school were there to assist the parents and the guardians in taking them through tours around the school. On the tours, parents were invited to see the new areas of the school, including the Fab Lab, that whole new area with all the additions of one of the new pathways of classes, the engineering pathway. It's a huge new space with a lot of 3D printers and engineering classes and technology. They were able to see the new classrooms, which were in two sides of our building, complete with the new furniture, and the rooms have lots of TVs in them, which are useful learning too. And the other big addition to our school, this being the second year, was the activity center. Parents were very eager to see that too, complete with the 3 new gyms, the very large weight room, the fitness center, and the dance studio. We're all in that activity center, so parents were encouraged to see that as well. In addition to this, there was a lot of sports teams and activities that also set up tables there to showcase the wide variety of opportunities that BHS represents. So I think it was a very huge success for parents in order to see not the building itself, not just the building itself, but to also see the activities, the sports, and the things that their children can get involved in at the school. So it was a great way to showcase the building and the new updates that we've had, and also the opportunities that all the BHS students are available to all the students at the school. So this is a huge success. Again, this happened on Thursday, November 2nd, and there was a lot of positive feedback from both the students that helped guide the tours, the students who were there to present their respective clubs and opportunities. So I've heard a lot of positive feedback from this night. The ongoing thing at the Burnsville High School, or the ongoing event, would be the Music Man, the Theater Girls presentation of the Music Man. I had the opportunity to go see it last week, and it was a very well done performance. There are a total of 8 performances, including 1 matinee, which was last Saturday, and 1 performance during the school day, which was yesterday. I believe it was Eagle Ridge that came to Burnsville High School in order to see the performance. They had that as a field trip for that day, so I thought that was a very cool opportunity as well. So there's a total of 8 performances. There are 2 more to be done, 1 tomorrow night and another one Saturday night, I think will be their final performance. I had the opportunity to see it last week, and it was very well done. There's a lot of people participating in that. It's a huge, Theater Guild is a very big organization in our school. There's a lot of people participating. You can usher, there's backstage, there's crew, there's people who are actually involved in the performances, the actors and actresses. So I've heard also a lot of positive feedback from that as well, regarding just the overall production and the collaboration of the work that it took to make such a stellar performance. So those are the 2 biggest things that have been happening within the past couple of weeks, and with the Music Man, an ongoing thing that will conclude on Saturday night. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Superintendent Amoroso.
Thank you. My report tonight is really going to focus on thanking our community for the support of our levy last week. And so what I would like to share is a video that we sent out to key communicators in the community, and an opportunity tonight to share it with everyone in our community and thank them for the support. So I'd like to start with that. It's been 100 days since I began serving as your superintendent. What a perfect point in time for me to tell you how passionate I am about what I see daily in our schools and in the community, and to tell you how grateful I am to be a part of the momentum in Burnsville, Egan, Savage. On behalf of all of District 191 schools, staff, and students, I want to thank our community for approving both levy referendum questions on November 7th. The overwhelming support, including 63% for a funding increase, is so meaningful to me and to everyone in the 191 community. We are committed to ensuring all of our students are future ready, and your support is essential to make that happen. I am so excited about the great things happening in our district. Thanks to your support, we'll be able to maintain the momentum of Vision 191. We'll continue developing and strengthening our innovative career and college pathways so that all students can find their passions and prepare to be successful in their futures. We'll continue providing the support services, including mental health services and cultural liaisons, that are bringing us together as a community and giving students what they need to succeed at school. We'll continue to attract and retain high-quality staff who will see the community support for our schools and know that they will be supported too. I'm excited about where we're headed as a school district and as a community. I know we're on the right path to meet the needs of all students, and we're grateful for your support to help keep us moving forward. Thank you for your commitment to and partnership with us. It makes us all community strong. The operating levy referendum was all about maintaining our momentum to redesign our school district to meet the needs of today's and tomorrow's learners. A big part of this is helping students to achieve their hopes and dreams so that all doors are open to them in the future. So I'll conclude with some more of our hopes and dreams from the students in the district. A student at Edward Neal Elementary says, "My second grade hope is to learn multiplication and division and get lots of homework." A third grader at Hidden Valley, "My dream is to learn more and have fun." And finally, a third grader at Edward Neal Elementary shares, "My dream is to do really cool science experiments and learn a lot of technology. I also want to be a really good basketball player and make lots of money." I'm not sure I can help the student out with making lots of money, but we will definitely help them out with science, technology, and basketball. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Cindy. I'll open it up to board members. Are there any board member reports?
Oh.
I'll do it.
Well, it was a week ago Sunday, I went out to eat with some friends, and it was in Wayzata, and it was this restaurant connected to a bakery. It's well-known, and of course, I could quick look it up, but I can't remember the name. And we got the most delightful wait person. She was enthusiastic. She was articulate. She was a good salesperson. And so we started chatting with her, a 2007 Burnsville High School grad. And she was wondering, and then, of course, pictures and, free dessert and, all kinds of stuff like that. So anyway, they're out there doing good things, so just it happened that way.
That's great. Any other board member reports?
Question for Cindy.
Sure.
Do you know how many people attended the Discover BHS event?
I have not heard.
I don't know if there's any numbers or anything like that, but do we track how many people come into the building? Because that's, sorry, I don't have my thing out.
Nope. I will certainly ask that question to find out.
I just love the idea, it's nice to know how
Yeah.
many people actually get
Yep,
exposed.
it's a great question.
It's great. Thanks.
Director Luth.
I'd like to add to what our superintendent just said about the two levy questions. I'm on this board because I was a co-chair back a few decades ago now, literally, with a former board member, Ron Hill. We co-chaired a levy referendum back in '97. I'll just go ahead and say it. Do the math, folks. Yep, 20 years ago. he joined the board 2 years later, and I joined, or 1 year later, and I joined the board 3 years later, roughly speaking. So I want to express my thanks to all of the people who volunteered, especially to our two co-chairs who did a yeoman's job of leading that effort. And though I know we're not probably supposed to say a whole lot from the board table about that, but, so I'll try to keep my comments. But I want to thank those people that worked very hard to help make that outcome come true for us. And I also want to thank those who took the time to go out and vote that day. You know, it wasn't a very robust voter turnout, but I don't care about that. I care about those who did show up at the polls that day, and they were clearly people who are touched by this district probably on a daily basis. And the vast majority of them obviously showed their strong support for keeping the momentum going. I've always loved that. Thank you to our communications department, whoever came up with that, but to bringing that forward, because it truly means a lot, because this board has worked very hard over the last few years getting to a point of getting Vision 191 and the many, many programs that our superintendent just mentioned, and there's many, many more beyond that. I've never been prouder of this district than I am right now, and I couldn't always say that from a board table. I truly couldn't. We are doing wonderful things here. We're starting to see even statistics start to get a little bit better. And so I thank everybody, because this allows this district to move forward and to continue forward with the momentum that we have. And at the end of the day, most importantly, I'm so happy for our students, because they're the ones that are going to reap the rewards of this. And having had two students that went through the system here, and having conversations with them, obviously as their father, at times they are truly astounded by what they see happening in this district, and they are very proud. And one of them has already bought a home in the district. I don't know about the other one yet. We'll see how that goes. He wants to. It says a lot in my own family. So I'll leave it at that, but that's my report today, I guess, is to say thank you to everybody who made that possible, and to how pleased I am for our students for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Last call for reports. I have one event to share. Darcy and Dee Dee and I today had the pleasure of being on a panel sponsored by, was hosted by the Burnsville Chamber, and it was a part of the last of a three-part series entitled Women Empowered, and was about elected officials who happen to be women. And we had a great representation from the community. We had Dakota County Commissioner Liz Workman. We had State Representative Roz Peterson, of course Darcy, and then Dee Dee, and then me, and then City Council Member Kara Schultz, and the esteemed Mayor Elizabeth Kautz. So it was a really great, we were asked to, we were given the questions in advance so we could come slightly prepared, because we were kind of tight on time. And it was just a great conversation. And good, well-attended by community members, business people, and I think a couple of just generally interested women from the community. And it was just a really great way to spend a lunch, and kind of coming together that, as elected officials who happen to be women, we're really, really pleased proud of our community, proud of what we are able to do as far as representing our community and looking out for the safety and well-being of our constituents. So, yes, Cindy.
I would just like to say that I was in attendance at that luncheon, and I was so proud to be there and to see three of our board members representing us on that panel. The three of you did an excellent job. Darcy could sideline as a comic, probably. But you did an excellent job, not only representing our district, but just representing leadership in general. And I just can't tell you how proud I was to be in the audience and to be represented by them. So thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn to a closed session listening session. We have your listening session, I'm sorry.
So there was a listening session on October 26th that I and Stacy Sovine, our Executive Director of Human Resources, conducted. There were no attendees at that listening session, so that concludes my report.
Okay. Now I will take a motion to adjourn. Second.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning to a closed session as permitted by Minnesota Statute 13D.05 to discuss negotiation strategies, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Let's take 5 minutes to move.